You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Supplemental. Where do we go from here?
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I am Charlene Schmidt, and just like on our flagship Mission Log podcast, here on Mission Log Prodigy, we like to discuss every episode of the animated series, discover what makes each one special, and of course we've got to detect any morals, messages, and meanings that we've learned. However, as you might have already guessed, this one's going to be a little different.
And I'm Earl Green. Please make sure to listen on podcasts.roddenberry.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, even though Stitcher's going away, or wherever you listen to Roddenberry Podcast. You can also follow Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter at ML_Prodigy to keep up with all our latest news and updates. Like Char just said, this episode will be very different from podcasts past, when we usually have discussed far more fun things like our episode recaps or our reviews of some of the great merchandise out there, like the Star Trek Prodigy Blu-ray, the action figures, the books, and so on. And we'll be getting back to more of the books, hopefully. But as many of you have heard by now, there is some very concerning news about Star Trek Prodigy. So in this podcast, we are going to discuss the official Paramount Plus Star Trek Prodigy cancellation news release, discuss our personal responses and how we felt at the time of that news breaking, Dan and Kevin Hageman and Aaron Walke's initial Twitter responses about Season 2, how Prodigy can currently be supported on social media. We're going to try to provide you with some tips on how you can support licensed Star Trek Prodigy products, both out in the consumer space now and what is coming up with the books. We're going to talk about what the future holds for our podcast, Mission Log Prodigy, and how Prodigy has been such an important entry point for young viewers watching Star Trek with their parents.
I mean, that's a pretty long laundry list and very important points. It's going to be a very robust discussion, so stick with us, folks. This is our first official response to the news that broke at the time of this recording, at the time of our podcast, about a week ago, about 7 days ago. So we have taken the time and we have taken the responsibility of making sure that we, disseminate the information responsibly so that we have the opportunity here to respond in a responsible and informational and cohesive way. And I wanted to start with how this all started. So usually on our Slack, we check in to see, what the rundown is for the course of the week, what our responsibilities are, the shows that are being produced, and any information or feedback that we were sharing between the Mission Log podcast teams. Then I stumbled upon something that Earl posted in our Prodigy discussion, and it was the article from Variety.com. Earl posted this to Slack. I read it. I had to put it aside for a moment because I wasn't exactly sure what I was reading. And we had very specific, very immediate reactions to it. So, Earl, can you please start us off in our discussion with how all of this transpired, beginning with the posting of the article? And how did you find this?
Well, this actually was something that I was clued into from the Mission Log Discord. Someone posted it there first. And, I kind of did the, David Diggs, what? And ran to read the article myself. And so this, let's talk about the article that I read. At June 23rd at 11 a.m. Pacific time, Variety.com released the following article with the headline, Grease Rise of the Pink Ladies, Star Trek Prodigy, among 4 shows canceled at Paramount Plus, will be pulled off streamer. The article, the first paragraph of the article is, the Paramount Plus series Grease, Rise of the Pink Ladies, Star Trek Prodigy, Queen of the Universe, and The Game have completed their runs on Paramount Plus and will not be returning to the service, a Paramount Plus spokesperson said. We want to extend our thanks to our tremendously talented cast and crew and our producing partners for their passionate work and dedication on these programs, and we wish them all the best on their future endeavors. News of the cancellations and subsequent removals comes just days ahead of the launch of the unified service Paramount Plus with Showtime, which will debut on June 27th.
So that's about as far as I got in the article when I first read this. I mean, aside from the responses that Earl and Char and I were sharing on Slack. So because I checked in with Prodigy, I checked in with our rundown to see what the plans were for covering the second young adult book, A Dangerous Trade, which was written by Cassandra Rose Clark. No, and we've mentioned this on the show before that, we were going to get to this second book after we did Supernova, but the action figures dropped and we had to cover that. And if you haven't seen that show, I think that's one of our best podcasts that we've done. This team did it,
Thank you, Earl.
There was no shortage of Earl's love for the action figures and what we've done with them subsequently to support those on social media. But then I read the article in total and I tried to digest it emotionally, and I had a very difficult time doing it to the point where I couldn't even focus on scripts that were upcoming for our flagship show, Mission Log, that's covering Voyager right now. So I'll talk about my reactions in a moment, but Char, what was your first reaction to all of this? Did you read the headline first, like Earl just read, and have a reaction to that? Or are you a far more composed person than I am and read the entire article to actually figure out what the actual body of the copy was saying?
Well, I would love to say I was more composed, and yes, I did read the rest of the article, but here's what happened. So it's really unfortunate that this headline does not tell the full story, because once I read that headline, I was in shock mode, right? It felt like Prodigy was over. Season 2 was no longer going to be this thing. The show was being removed from existence by being pulled off streaming. It was just so bleak. And so after I took just a few seconds to try and take that in, I wanted all the answers to all of the questions, the big one being, why? So I did go into the article. I had to find the details, but I realized that as I was reading the words, I was not comprehending them. They were not processing. It's like that headline broke my brain. I could not process the rest, and it took little increments as the day went on to eventually get there. But that is what happened, especially when the heartbreak set in. Because Norm, you and I, and Earl too, we all love this show. And when it sunk in, I just thought, man, this is the possible end of so many things. And I was sad. So I did what might have been the wrong thing, but it ended up being the right thing. Hang with me here. Went on social media to see if anybody could clarify this article, give me some make it make sense kind of answers. And yes, maybe to commiserate just a little bit, because that's what we do when we're sad. But surprisingly, after I saw certain tweets from Aaron Waltke, the Hagemans, I started feeling a little better about the whole thing, because they set the record straight. But before I get into too much, let's put a pin in that, and before I get ahead of our conversation here.
Yeah, we'll get to the social media announcements, just in a little bit. But I'm glad that you brought up that you went on social media to find the official responses, if any, and just kind of take the temperature of what was happening, in real time. I did the exact same thing. And I even reposted one of the main outlets, that was sharing this information. And there was a response to the official Mission Log Prodigy Twitter feed that said season 2 was still under production. So I went back, and again, I had to dial all of the emotional response, my own emotional cathartic response, back and kind of tamp that down a little bit to do what I think needed to be done in the first place before I shared any information officially on Twitter, and that is to get the facts. because that's how we're going to get through this. We need to have the facts so that we have the right information to make the right decisions. And I reread the article from Variety, and I wanted to focus on and highlight for all of you out there who may have not read the entire article, why the headline of the article may have been misleading and where we are with the future of Prodigy season 2. So the article said, buried deep within the article, quote, the cancellation of Star Trek Prodigy, the first animated kids show in the Star Trek universe, comes despite the fact that the show was renewed for a second season back in 2021. According to an individual with knowledge of the situation, although the show had aired on Nickelodeon in addition to Paramount Plus, it will not be returning to Nickelodeon either. Here is the point. And this was how this particular article, this segment of the article finishes. Those on the show will complete post-production on season 2, and then CBS Studios will be free to shop it to other outlets. Now, let me repeat this. Those on the show will complete post-production on season 2, and then CBS Studios will be free to shop it to other outlets. That I did not read, and that I did not understand at the very beginning of reading the article based on the headline.
They buried the lead. That's why.
That's exactly what they did. Earl, when you read the article, did you get that far before you started making certain assumptions about where this was headed?
It took me a little while. I think like it did all of us, because, like yourselves, I have been very attached to this show. I have 2 kids, and, so I have Prodigy fans in my house, and, for reasons we'll get into later, I've been a Prodigy fan since the thing was announced. So it took me a little while to simmer down and kind of see, and, we already knew from people working on the show that the second season was fairly far along in post-production. I would have been very surprised if that was completely discarded at that stage. Like, we're not even going to finish it. That has happened, though, fairly recently to other shows. They've had stuff in the can that they just abandoned. They didn't complete editing and post-production on it. Nobody scored the soundtrack. It was just left unfinished. So it's good that they're far enough along in the process. And of course, this is really the bottom line to all of this. Money has been spent on finishing the shows. So they are going to try to find a new home for it and recoup that investment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, numbers.
And I do believe where we are right now. So we are recording this episode June 30th, 2023. And I know that we usually don't timestamp certain elements of the show to keep it evergreen, but I need to have this on record so that we're looking at a timeline of events. June 23rd was when the article came out. And in the article also, there were explanations that the entire Prodigy series would be pulled from Paramount Plus as a streaming product. There were assumptions that that would have been at the end of the month, which is where we are right now. The Prodigy season in its entirety, I do believe, was pulled on June 27th, which was only 4 days after the announcement was made. So that really left the Prodigy fans in a very vulnerable place emotionally. And that's where we turn to social media to try and find and make some sense out of what was happening. And thank you, Char, earlier on for saying that you checked to see what Dan, Kevin Hageman, and Aaron Waltke's responses were, because they're, for all intents and purposes, for this particular series, these are our captains, of Prodigy, and
1000%.
What they know, we will know. And I want to go to some of their first initial responses on Twitter, just for the record, so that we can see what they were trying to tell us, the audience, in terms of be patient, be vigilant, and understand what is happening exactly as it is happening. So on 2:41 p.m. on June 23rd, This was several hours after the article on Variety.com was released. The Hageman said, Star Trek has taught my brother and me to strive for a better future. While news of Star Trek Prodigy not returning to Paramount Plus is disappointing, we have faith that this show will be picked up by a new home to help grow our fervent fan base and inspire the next generation of Star Trek fans. Our talented and passionate teams of artists are working tirelessly to complete season 2. That in and of itself corroborates exactly what the article and the point that we established from Variety.com, that season 2 is being produced and will be completed. Then just shortly after that tweet, Aaron Waltke, his executive producer on the show and one of the writers, he tweeted, obviously there is not much I can say. Everyone on the cast and crew loves Star Trek Prodigy deeply. I have noticed some misleading headlines, so all I can do is point to this particular part of the press release. We are completing season 2 on schedule and seeking a new home. Now, what he is alluding to, there's an attachment on that particular tweet that he focused on, and it's highlighted saying season 2 is currently in post-production and the studio is currently looking for a new home for the series. Now, that's not exactly word for word from the Variety.com release. So now we have two sources and the Hagemans and Aaron Waltke basically saying season 2 is going to be produced, it's in post-production, and is now being shopped for a new home. So is this keeping hope alive, Char? What does this say to you? And then we'll get to Earl.
I think it does. When I did read stuff from the Hagemans as well as Aaron Waltke, that is what had a positive effect. That's what I was kind of alluding to earlier was, okay, one, I got clarity. They told me what I really needed to know, which unfortunately just did not happen as well with the article. So, and then seeing that they have hope, that's what gave me some hope. Like, okay, it's not completely over just yet. Prodigy has a fighting chance. And I don't know if they'd be finishing season 2 necessarily if that wasn't the case. I mean, we did talk about numbers just a moment ago, but the fact that they are going to complete season 2, it's going to be ready to go. So somebody pick it up, please. It's really easy to feel jaded about this whole thing. And we were definitely feeling that the day this news broke. But since then, I have felt a little more positive, and I want to thank Aaron Waltke and the Hagemans and everybody who's working on the show, but especially them because they're so active on social media. They were the cool heads in the room, set the record straight, and basically have helped the fan base channel their energy into positive actions that can give the show this fighting chance that it needs. So we're eventually going to talk about ways that everybody can help, but Earl, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I can tell you that there is a very active petition to CBS Studios and Paramount Plus on change.org, which is a, platform for petitions of this sort of thing to kind of change, both public opinion and raise awareness and to, try to change some minds down the road. And this petition was started on the 23rd by Michelle Stokes. It's close to reaching 25,000 signatures with a goal of 50,000 to be heard, meaning perhaps for the submission of the petition to be officially recognized and have any impact at all on the current situation. And I should also point out that one person who has been vocal on social media about directing people toward this petition to raise awareness of Prodigy's plight is Anson Mount, who plays Captain Pike on Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Solidarity. Love it.
Yeah. So, we don't want to let Janeway down, and I'm certainly not going to let Captain Pike down. So,
heck no.
Yeah, get out there and sign that petition.
Yeah, and I do believe recently Will Wheaton has also added his name into the support column with a very lengthy and a very well articulated response to what is happening, with Star Trek Prodigy. So you can follow those specific accounts to learn more and just kind of follow their responses. But I also wanted to make a remark on what they're doing with, Michelle Stokes' petition on change.org and how that, is very closely related to the Trimble mail-in campaign that saved the original series from cancellation during season 2 and then getting them at least one more shot at season 3 and or else we wouldn't have had the Star Trek that we had today. This actually happened recently. to a show that was produced by CBS and then streamed on Paramount Plus, and that's the current reboot of Magnum PI. Magnum PI in July 1st of 22 was canceled at the end of season 4. And that's one of my favorite shows. And I kept following this to see what the fan base and what the fan outrage and the response is going to be. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up with the Change.org campaign, because, and I'm going to quote an article from IndieWire.com that was posted on July 1st, 2022, shortly after Magnum was canceled for season 4. Tony Maglio wrote, and I quote, 49 days after CBS surprisingly axed Magnum PI, NBC signed a lease agreement for Thomas Magnum's shiny red Ferrari, end quote. Tony further explains that, quote, discussions about NBC picking up the show began immediately after CBS's cancellation. The person told us, citing the pretty loud fan outcry and subsequent media coverage of the grassroots campaigning as 2 material reasons the show was saved, end quote. So, going into the next segment, and Char, you were alluding to this too, there is an opportunity here for the fans to be able to have their voices heard, as they're doing right now across social media and across these petitions, but also with another indicator, to possible distribution outlets for the show, to see that there is a fan base that will follow Star Trek Prodigy from their current home, or lack thereof, at Paramount Plus to another possible destination. So let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing here at Star Trek Prodigy on Mission Log Prodigy, and with the coverage of the product lines.
Yeah, we've been doing that, and those have been so much fun. There are a number of ways that you can show support by buying physical Star Trek Prodigy products. So let's do a quick rundown of what is available right now. There is, of course, Prodigy episodes 1 and 10, or 1 through 10, not just those 2, but all of them. The first half, anyway, on Blu-ray, digitally. You can get it on Amazon and iTunes. You can also get the Supernova video game, as of the time that we're recording this, at a discount on most platforms. It is $19.99 at Amazon for the PS5 and $17.49 on Steam. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's a sale on the Switch right now, but hey, keep an eye out. It might happen. And of course, our action figures, Zero, show up. If you have not bought the action figures, what are you waiting for? You've got to get them. Murph demands that you buy him. And you can also get pins, Prodigy pins from fan sets, which, Norm, you linked to me. Yeah, the comm badge. It's really cool. You can get individual pins of all of the characters, or you can get the complete set all in one go. And then, of course, the comm badge, the Christmas ornament, is still available. Who doesn't want another Murph in their lives? Come on. So there's all of that, plus the books. We did review Supernova Book 1. We are going to hit Book 2. We promise. We know it's been massively delayed. We've been saying this for a while, but it will happen. And we do have another one coming up. Book number 3. It's called Escape Route, and that is also written by Cassandra Rose Clark, and that's set for an August release. So we will be covering that. Plus, there's a box set of the 3 books together, also set for an August release. So if you have been holding out and not getting each book individually, there is a chance to get them together. Keep in mind that occasionally some of these products have sold out, which shows that this is working. So keep going. And if money's tight, you can't support financially, that is okay. There's still another way that you can help. And this is really generating a lot of good noise online. And that is the Save Star Trek Prodigy hashtag on social media. So this is to show prospective buyers that we are a strong and supportive fan base, and we would be grateful to see season 2, possibly more. And it shows the support too to the folks who have made the show, lets them know how much we love them and appreciate their work and them just as people. So whatever you can do, however you can do it, show some support. Now is the time.
I'm glad that you brought up all these different products. And I did put these, if you're watching the video portion of this podcast, I did show these on camera. And, there may be some fans saying, well, Norm, you're supported by Roddenberry. You're probably getting comped for these. I bought these, every single one of them, with my own money, because I am a Prodigy fan first and foremost. Earl, why don't you talk about, you have such a passion for the action figures, and it showed on, a previous show of ours where we discovered, discussed the action figures in total, but what do these products mean to you? What do they represent?
First off, I was so glad because, the previous Playmates figures, we got one wave before that was 3 guys from Wrath of Khan, 3 guys from Next Generation, a couple of characters from Discovery. I was more enthusiastic about that. But this was the first wave of figures we got that was all from any one of the new shows, and it was from Prodigy. And they are fantastic. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen such a difference between Wave 1 and Wave 2 of an action figure line as there was, stepping up to the Prodigy figures here, because they're so detailed. I really kind of wonder if they used the model files from, the CGI artists to create the action figures, because they are so accurate. They're so well done. The paint work on them is next level. The accessories are a lot of fun. And I'm just, now I'm worried we're not going to get Rock Talk. And I'm going to have to bribe someone with a 3D printer to make me a Rock Talk in an appropriate scale, which will be massive. But I'm hoping that we can show that there is still life left in this series and that there is a fan base still willing to support it. So, I don't have to hunt down someone with a 3D printer to print a Rock Talk for me.
We need to save Earl from that pain.
Yes. The another product that is not in any danger of going out of stock, I don't think, is the soundtracks.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you, Earl.
And these are available digitally. I mean, they're on iTunes. They're on Amazon Music. Numerous outlets like that. The music for this show is so awesome. Now it's kind of confusing how they did it, because they released the music from the premiere, the 2-part premiere. And then they did a different release that was that plus the next couple of episodes. And they kept doing it incremental like that. Really what you need, the 2 releases you need to get all of the music from season 1. The first one you need is Star Trek Prodigy original score from the series. And you're looking for the version that has, I'm on Amazon looking at this, 93 tracks of music. That's a lot of music.
That is.
And then Star Trek Prodigy Volume 5. And that has 73 tracks. But the music is so much fun. I mean, Norm, you talked to Nami Melamad, very early in doing Mission Log Prodigy about the music, because we're so used to animated shows getting kind of chintzy synthesizer scores, and she is out there just blasting this through a real orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's like one of my favorite tracks on either of the soundtracks is I'm trying to remember. It's kind of the riff on AC/DC's Thunderstruck. It's from Kobayashi.
Oh yeah,
where they bring in the electric guitar and they just rock out with that.
It's so close. It's really close to Thunderstruck. Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, there's a track titled Murph Toot. Like, how can you not love that? How can you not love that? Yeah, I am a longtime Star Trek soundtrack enthusiast, going all the way back to, that giant box set of all of the original series music. And I love the Prodigy soundtracks. I wish they would get a physical release. Yeah. But for right now, the digital releases are out there. And, come on, 70-something tracks, 90-something tracks, that's more than is going to fit on a number of CDs. So it may be the digital releases are all that we get. Those are out there. Go get them. They are good listening if you're a film score fan, or if you're just a Prodigy fan, if you're just wanting to relive, these key moments of the show. It's great.
Yeah, I do that. I'll listen to the soundtrack, and it gives me that beautiful, positive vibe energy from Prodigy. It's fun.
And if you're just driving along and you want to ugly cry in the middle of traffic, put on that track where Hologram Janeway is delivering her message to the kids in the shuttlecraft.
I'm going to ugly cry right now, because I can hear it in my mind's ear. Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they've got that track on there, and it's just like, I sit there and put that on, and by the end of it, I'm just like, oh, okay, Janeway, I hear you.
And, to make more of a point of that, so the Blu-ray and the streaming digital products that you can purchase right now are only the first 10 episodes. And as far as I know, even in the digital platforms where you can purchase that, like say on Amazon Prime or on iTunes, I'm not sure if they come with the nearly 75 minutes worth of bonus material that the Blu-ray comes with. So that's where really like the value is. Even if you don't think it's a full collection's worth of, your money, the behind the scenes, I think, are the only, if not the most robust behind the scenes that are available that you can watch. And then you can actually see the process of Dan and Kevin, Aaron, Nami, Benny Bond, and all the people that are, very in tune with creating this world and this universe for Prodigy. They're there and they're discussing their processes. We did that show, for Mission Log Prodigy, several shows ago, but it's definitely worth the money that you're going to spend, even if it's not a complete set. So hopefully, with all of these product supports, indicators, we'll see if we'll get the 11 through 20, because 11 through 20 on Prodigy, in my opinion, have some of the strongest episodes in the series so far. All the Worlds of Stage, obviously Supernova 1 and 2, Mind Walk. Oh my God.
Right. So much good stuff. And again, really good music.
Right. So please support as you can, when you can. But again, every single indicator, every single metric helps when they're trying to put together the numbers that will be attractive to a potential buyer and future distributor. But here's probably something that I think is most important to what is happening right now in terms of losing Prodigy on streaming. It's the impact on the intended target audience, who we call and who we've, so affectionately have had interact with us, our young cadets, the younger viewers. And I want to make a point of this, and I want to give, credit where credit is due. When Roddenberry, when he greenlit this podcast, Mission Log Prodigy, he suggested that we focus on Prodigy's intended audience, and that's the Nickelodeon audience, why the show was created and who was created for, kids and teenagers. And he also expressly wanted to have listener feedback from these young cadets alongside with their parents. And he actually formulated the questions, what was your favorite episode? What did you learn? And these are kind of like akin to what we talk about in the Mission Log main podcast with, does this episode withstand the test of time? And are there any morals, meanings, and messages? Because that's the heart of Star Trek. So recently, on social media, I've seen too many examples of Star Trek parents and content creators that have been expressing not only their disappointment with Paramount Plus's decision, but also an issue that they've been facing personally is and try to explain the cancellation of this series, to their child, or children, or their young viewers that are watching with them, because now you don't have that particular series that is the gateway series and that shared experience with parents and children. That's something that's so incredibly important that Paramount brought to the discussion. So I'd like to discuss these two specific points, what Prodigy meant to this new audience from what we've heard with our young cadet feedback, and how important that the series has been for bridging this gap between children and parents, and actually having a series that children can watch because it's age appropriate, right? So that's something also that you can't discount. This was the age appropriate Star Trek for a certain generation, where a lot of the live action shows may be a little bit more above board when it comes to action, adventure, maturity levels, certain things that parents aren't comfortable with. So how did you feel about this, Char? Are you reading any of this stuff on social media, and what are your responses? Oh
yeah. I've definitely seen a number of parents, unhappy parents, saying, this is devastating. I hate this. And you know what? I hate it for you all. My heart breaks for the families that watch this show together. Like, I'm not a parent, but I have to imagine how awful this was when you had to tell your kids what was happening. And I especially feel bad, though, for the kids. This is their trek. This was their entry into this whole world that we've been living in for a long time, but they were supposed to be growing up with this crew. And I hope that still happens. I hope this is just a bump in the road and they still get the chance to do that, because it was so important. And to just let it go feels wrong.
And it's really hard, like in the social media space, to try and be supportive in an understanding way when you don't really understand what that means. You know, that bond between, you know, parent and child, that bond between, you know, veteran Star Trek fan versus, you know, a child or a loved one who's very young, and you're trying to, and you're trying to ingratiate them, you know, and expose them in the right way to this Star Trek experience, like from the ground up, which is exactly why Prodigy was created. You know, because before we started recording, we were talking about this was a specific point of Alex Kurtzman's to create this one series that is literally the entry point, the gateway for the target market audience that was never represented amidst all of these live action shows. Earl, you brought that up in the conversation before we started recording. And I know that there's also something very specific that you wanted to say to the audience about, you know, your experience as a parent. So if you could elaborate on those points a little bit more, please.
Well, I have two sons, and it's kind of funny because I had already kind of on-ramped them into Star Trek before the age of, you know, Paramount Plus or even CBS All Access, because I had introduced them to the original animated series in the 70s, which, you know, the press release about, you know, this was the first one for kids. No, it wasn't. But the 70s show, it's from such a different time and such a different viewpoint that it can't help but read differently. You know, it is almost like a grown-up cartoon at this point, because the only people, really the only people still watching it are the people who remembered seeing it as kids. And, you know, spoiler, we're not kids now.
I raised my hand for those of you who are not watching the video version of it. So, yeah.
We're old kids. I'm a retired kid. But, you know, also from a work perspective, I worked in broadcast TV for over 20 years. That was what I did before, you know, landing in this wonderful world of podcasting. And I have seen networks and syndication distributors alike do really weird things. And occasionally, you know, once in a blue moon, some really brilliant things. But I don't think I've ever seen a show just pulled out of distribution this quickly before. I mean, I can think of maybe one exception. There was a show on UPN, which was a previous Paramount network, in the late 90s, that it was called The Secret Diary of Desmond Pfeiffer. And it was a deeply offensive sitcom. People were calling stations to protest it based on the trailers before a single episode ever aired. People were not rooting for that show. And after 2 weeks, it was like the network couldn't get rid of it fast enough. It breaks my brain and hurts my heart to see Prodigy getting treated like that, because Prodigy is not this ill-conceived sitcom with absolutely no redeeming social value. Prodigy put forth positive messages, you know, to my kids and to everyone else's about teamwork and perseverance, doing the right thing when no one else is looking, the value of science and rational thinking instead of, you know, letting your emotions get the best of you, and serving interests that are bigger than just your own interests. These are incredibly smart and valuable messages. And I think Prodigy was doing a better job than most of the other Star Trek that we've had in this streaming age of putting these Star Trek values in front of an audience and saying, this is what this is about. This is what these stories are telling you. And my kids were, or especially my older son, was a fan of Troll Hunters back when it was brand new. And so I can tell you that this very smart storytelling, this is Dan and Kevin Hageman's brand. And, you know, having already seen Troll Hunters before Prodigy was ever even announced, whenever it was made known that these were the guys who were going to be the showrunners on Star Trek Prodigy, I was like, okay, I'm in. I'm 100% in. You got me. Because smart and compassionate and not condescending, that is their brand. And as a dad, I cannot appreciate that enough. I cannot thank them enough for weaving that into this wonderful show. And so we've got to do whatever we can to put the pressure on to give Star Trek Prodigy a second chance. It deserves it. We need it.
You also shared with us that how this has been an on-ramp, from Star Trek Prodigy to Strange New Worlds, for your son. So how did that happen? Was this just an organic conversation? Were you talking about the cancellation of Star Trek Prodigy?
Well, because the shows are kind of arriving one at a time this year instead of the crazy overlap that happened last year that I'm not sure, honestly helped any of them. We kind of, I broke the news to him that, okay, Star Trek Prodigy is going away. And he was calmer about it than I was. He was like, okay, but could we put Murph on Strange New Worlds?
From the mouth of babes.
And I'm just like, how did that even work? They've got that one seat over there that's, always occupied by extras. Could we just put Murph over in that chair? I'll sit there under a purple blanket. I'll fly to Toronto and sit there under a purple blanket if that'll help. With big eyeballs painted on it. I'd make a very Murph. Chief Murph.
I love this idea so much.
It'll happen. I'm already seeing people generating Photoshop memes right now. So.
It would actually, well, because of the time frame, if you think about it, it would be Murph's great-great-grand Murph. So it'd be like Blob Murph with this big white beard.
Oh my God, this idea just keeps getting better.
At ML_Prodigy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
okay. We have another hashtag.
It's such a difficult conversation. I think that's being had out there again with parents and children. Like, how are they explaining away that their favorite series and the series that they watched with their parents and probably help them grow closer together, as a family? This is family destination viewing time when these come out. So that's important, especially in a day and age right now where everything can be done in such isolation. But being able to do it at home, and then create, again, destination TV to view. I really hope that in some way, shape, or form that's going to be in our future with Prodigy season 2, if and when it lands. So I guess that brings us to our final point here as we start wrapping up the show. What does this mean for our podcast, Mission Log Prodigy, moving forward? The big question is, and maybe it is for our audience out there, and one of the reasons specifically why we wanted to get this podcast so edited and produced so quickly, in response to the news of about 7 days ago from this recording, the big question is, what do we do without Prodigy moving forward? Well, there is that. There is the fact that we've already covered the first 20 episodes in its entirety. That doesn't change. And, our content on, YouTube at Roddenberry Entertainment, that's evergreen. We've had our interviews with the Hagemans, with Nami, with Aaron Waltke, with Benny Bone. There are several interviews that I'd still like to be able to schedule. I'd love to have the Benson sisters. I would love to have, or we would love to have, Bonnie Gordon. We would love to have, several of the animators or the designers or, again, repeat interviews always from kind of like the showrunners is a fantastic thing. So
can we get them all of them? Can we do all those interviews?
All of them, not all at once over the course of time. So we have many shows in our future to schedule. But there are still a lot of people and a lot of talented, people and creatives that are still producing. And we will bring you that information as much as we can when we can, because, the information out there is happening in real time. But, we are dedicated to making sure that, all of you are informed and making sure that we can still bring you fresh content. And let's go all the way back to the books. The books are still coming out. We still have 2 more books to review. We have an individual hardcover book and then the trilogy of books in paperback form. I don't know if they're going to be any more published because we haven't seen any of that information. I think probably production right now in terms of product releases is on a freeze, just in terms of where licensors want to go with that. So, and if there's anything that you out there, in the audience would like for us to cover specifically, please let us know. You can always email us at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. That's missionlog- or the hyphen prodigy at roddenberry.com. And then again, you can also follow us. I'll leave that up to Char when she takes us out. So I just want to say on behalf of Char and Earl, if you have any final parting thoughts, for our audience, this is the time.
Hashtag make more Murph.
Or hashtag merchandise.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Could we please have all the Murph merchandise? And I really want to see Murph on Strange New Worlds now, just to see what that would be like. Thank you for that, Earl. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, keep up the energy. If you're part of this fan base, you probably know a lot about what we've talked about today, the Safe Star Trek Prodigy hashtag and all of that. Just keep doing what you can, when you can, however you can, because it's helping.
All right, Char, and with that, please take us out.
All right. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Production and technical direction is by the wonderful Earl Green. And our website, your opportunity to comment and connect with us, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, and why wouldn't you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, go to ML_Prodigy.
So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us. We will do our very best to keep you informed and up to date with what we know about the future of Star Trek Prodigy, along with the information that's being shared online in the best real-time process that we can. Please make sure that you stay in touch with us with all the information that Char gave you. Please stay connected here on our channel on Roddenberry YouTube Entertainment, and please subscribe, please like, please share. If you have friends that are interested in Prodigy and want to get more content, please share who we are and what we do with them. Thank you, everyone, for supporting us. And like our beloved Prodigy crew, we'll keep pushing forward with the hope for a better tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Go boldly and go fast.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.